Uh, I'm not really sure how to start this, but uh, I watched the game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs the other day, and I just I don't want to sound really negative here, but it's unavoidable. Um, I've been watching NFL football for many years, and I've watched probably thousands of games or parts of thousands of games. And I'm an eye test guy. I'm also a stat guy, but stats can be deceiving. A good example of stats being deceiving are going to be Jimmy Garoppolo when he was in San Francisco. On paper, the numbers look great. The efficiency numbers look great. Uh, the warts that he has were hidden quite well by the Shanahan regime. And I'm not saying that Jimmy Garoppolo is a bad quarterback. I'm just saying that Kyle Shanahan got the best out of Jimmy Garoppolo. And um, when you look at on paper, his ratios are Hall of Fame caliber ratios. And then when you watch him on the field, he looks good most of the time, but the errors that he makes start to stack, okay? And that's one way that statistics can be misleading. And I bring that example up because anyone who has watched football and knows NFL football would be able to see that, although Jimmy Garoppolo had some success, he, almost won a Super Bowl, probably should have won a Super Bowl if that 49ers team had not choked away a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. We can get into the weeds as far as the officials not making calls on that final drive, many calls that were missed or allowed to go on, holding calls by the offensive line, all sorts of different things that allowed that game to end the way it did. But that's not really why I'm doing this today. Why I'm doing this today is because I have a viewpoint that is going to be different than a lot of people probably when it comes to Lamar Jackson. I wish Lamar Jackson all of the success in the world, and I hope he does well. And I don't know the man. I don't know very much about him personally, uh, but a critical analysis of his ability to thrive at the quarterback position is largely what has created my desire to make this clip today. Uh, Lamar Jackson has won 2 MVP awards at the in the NFL, which is remarkable to me, um, because his best assets as as far as what he brings to the table as an NFL quarterback are not. He does not excel at quarterbacking. So if you have a player that does not excel at quarterbacking, winning 2 NFL MVPs at the quarterback position, something is not right. And that is very easily illustrated by the idea that no one would give him a contract when he was up for a contract. And he kind of had to go back to Baltimore and accept whatever they were willing to give him. Um, last year. So let me preface this with saying I have no bias against the Baltimore Ravens. I'm a 49ers fan. Um, and I don't hold it against Baltimore for winning the Super Bowl that they did against San Francisco. I have no beef with. I like I like Harbaugh as a coach. I think he's probably a pretty good man. Um, I have a lot of respect for what the organization was able to accomplish with the quarterbacks that they've had over the years. You know, they've never had good quarterback play, or they've never had elite quarterback play. Okay, there's a big difference between a good quarterback, uh, a serviceable quarterback, a elite quarterback. When I talk about elite quarterback play, what comes to mind? I mean, obviously, Patrick Mahomes, right? Because he's the best quarterback in the NFL right now. But uh, his he is not a traditional elite quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is an elite quarterback. Do not misunderstand me. Um, I think probably as far as God-given talent and physical ability and the ability to play the quarterback position, there maybe has never been a better specimen at the NFL level than Patrick Mahomes in the current construct of the NFL. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback that's ever played. I'm just saying his God-given abilities are so good. The stuff that he does, his ability to analyze and process information and then physically do what he does is really unparalleled. I think personally the best quarterback that's ever played the game is Tom Brady. I don't think there's really any disputing that. His numbers and success illustrate that. I mean, typically the way quarterbacks are judged is based on, well, what is their statistical production in the regular season, and then what is their winning record in the postseason. And Tom Brady tops the list in both of those categories. So it would be awfully difficult to put together an argument that would stand up against Tom Brady being the best quarterback in the history of football. I don't really even know who the second best would be. At this point, I would have to do some digging. It would be very difficult to find who's number two. It's kind of like Jerry Rice is the number one wide receiver of all time, and then who's number two? Who's number two is really, really debatable. There's a lot of guys that are close to one another, but then you have a huge separation between number two, three, and four, and then number one. Number one is miles ahead of two, three, and four, which are really close to each other. And I would say the same thing about Tom Brady at the quarterback position. There's Tom Brady, and then there's 2, 3, and 4, maybe 5, 6, and 7, all kind of lumped up together that are very close. And an argument can be made that 6 and 7 are just as good as 2. They're all very, very close to one another and exceptional, no doubt. But compared to Brady, they're just. I mean, Brady spent half of his career in the Super Bowl. I mean, think about that. It's insane. So, we're talking about elite quarterbacking. Joe Burrow might be one of the most impressive games I've seen quarterbacking in the NFL was last year when Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals took on San Francisco. San Francisco's defense last year was very good. I don't know that I would say. I think probably their 2019 defense was maybe more dominant. I mean, they were dominant. Last year they were good, but they weren't the best defense in football probably last year. They were one of the better defenses for sure. But I think Joe Burrow had 100% completion percentage at halftime against them last year in the game they played, which is incredible for any quarterback to do that against that defense. last year. But Joe Burrow, when Joe Burrow is at his best, I don't think there's anybody better in the NFL right now. If I were going to rank the top quarterbacks in the NFL right now, I think I would probably say Patrick Mahomes 1, probably Aaron Rodgers number 2, Joe Burrow probably number 3. And then after that, then it gets kind of muddy. You know, you have Matt Stafford, you've got Josh Allen. Stafford's won a Super Bowl. Stafford has not. Stafford has had, Allen has had bad luck in the playoffs, but I think he's just not really had great teams to play on. Justin Herbert, I think, is on the caliber of Josh Allen or of Joe Burrow. Honestly, just my personal opinion, the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC is going to go through Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow over the next decade. Patrick Mahomes, yes, he has been great, but what happens to Patrick Mahomes if Andy Reid is no longer the coach? What happens to Patrick Mahomes when Jason Kelce loses a step because he just gets too old and can't do it anymore? What happens to Patrick Mahomes when the defense isn't as good, or when their defensive coordinator gets poached and gets offered a head coaching job sometime? Maybe he doesn't want to do that. I don't know. He's been a defensive coordinator for a long time. He was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants when Eli Manning beat Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl. So he is a great defensive mind. Maybe he doesn't want to be a head coach. I don't really know. But what happens if he leaves? You know, there's a lot of what happens if with Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes' success is not sustainable. His win-loss record in the postseason is not sustainable. His win-loss record in the regular season is not sustainable. And his offensive production in the regular season is simply not sustainable. Patrick Mahomes has been very, very, very lucky in the playoffs. He's had, I don't know how many, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he has had many instances where him and the Kansas City Chiefs have been trailing by multiple scores, even as many as 3 or more scores in postseason games, and come back to win that. If you look at the history of football, having a 7-point lead at any point in the game in the NFL gives you a very good odd of winning that game. And a 2-score lead is almost, I mean, statistically, you're screwed. If you're down by 2 scores in the NFL, it's over. Those games are too close. You look at, like, even that game, the first game of the year this year, where Baltimore went into Kansas City, okay? That was a 2-score game in the fourth quarter, and Baltimore made it close, but they didn't win. They still lost. They could have won if Lamar Jackson had hit the guy that was wide open in the end zone the play before the out-of-bounds pass. If Lamar Jackson was a better quarterback. If Lamar Jackson was better at quarterbacking, maybe they have a chance there. Harbaugh was going to go for 2, which, whatever. I mean, I guess you're on the road. It's week 1. Whatever, right? Roll the dice. You like your odds with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson inside the 2-yard line against anybody, I think. In that short yardage situation, you have a lot of plays with the players that you have if it's not a time-sensitive down, you know what I mean? And that's really where we get into the problems with Lamar Jackson and the marriage between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry, I'm a huge fan of Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's arguably the best running back of his era, and he is largely Adrian Peterson 2.0. When I say that, I mean that he is just a dominant force. I mean, you shouldn't be able to be that big and that strong and that fast. That is incredible. Derrick Henry is an amazing specimen of a man, an amazing specimen of a football player. But I don't see how that's a good fit in Baltimore because Lamar Jackson likes to operate out of the shotgun. And Lamar Jackson cannibalizes the production of the running game from the other running players, right? So it's a zero-sum game, and there's only so many yards available. There are only so many touchdowns available that can be scored via the running game for any team, right? There's a critical mass there. Once you get up into some thin air as far as records are concerned, there's just only so many yards that can be acquired. There's only so many touchdowns that can be acquired via the running game of the NFL in a game, in a season. And Lamar Jackson eats up a lot of yards in the running game, which means those yards in the running game are not being produced by running backs. It's just the way it is. So you bring in Derrick Henry. Now, Derrick Henry's 30 years old, but because he is who he is, I would say probably he has more gas in the tank than other running backs who have played into their 30s. Maybe not all. I mean, Adrian Peterson played at a high level into his 30s. Other running backs have been able to do that. I think Derrick Henry is fully capable of doing that. So Chris Collinsworth made a really good point. I'm not a real big Chris Collinsworth fan. He also said, and let me dig the quote out here. So not everything that he says is right, but he did say, Chris Collinsworth, Lamar has always been a pocket passer. So has Patrick Mahomes. That is a quote from Chris Collinsworth. That is about the most ridiculous thing I've heard. Neither of them are pocket passers. Lamar Jackson is a running, athletic quarterback. Patrick Mahomes, if you want to beat Patrick Mahomes, you force him to stay in the pocket. You do not let him escape. If you allow him to step up and run forward or roll out and run along the sidelines, you're screwed. You can't do that. That's one of the biggest problems with dealing with Patrick Mahomes is you can't really use man coverage against him, because if you do, then he's just going to escape the pocket and he's going to make you look bad. That's one thing. I don't know if there's been anyone better at. Russell Wilson was really good at this too. Being able to avoid the sack, extend the play, and then throw a bomb on a broken play and score a big play. Russell Wilson made his career out of doing that in Seattle, and Patrick Mahomes has made a career out of doing that in Kansas City. I would say Ben Roethlisberger was about as difficult of a quarterback to sack that wasn't athletic. He wasn't a running guy. He was more of a statue guy, but he was just so big and strong that he was so hard to bring down. He would find a way to get rid of the ball before he was brought down. And so watching that was so impressive, and it must be so demoralizing for a defense to not be able to bring the guy down. Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson, on the other hand, are hard to bring down for different reasons. Both of them are very high IQ quarterbacks. They understand the game. They're very good at the game. Russell Wilson has got a lot of heat when he went to Denver, but honestly, I think that was just a bad marriage between him and Peyton. That was just not a good situation. Peyton wants to do things his way, and Russell Wilson is the kind of quarterback that needs a coach who's going to emphasize his strengths. I don't want to go so far as to call him a system quarterback. That word gets thrown around a lot, especially with guys like Brock Purdy, other quarterbacks. Was Tom Brady a system quarterback? I think on some level, all quarterbacks are a system quarterback. If you put them in the system that's best tailored to for them to have success, then you're maximizing their ability to succeed. And so it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what it is. If a person is put in the best situation for them to succeed, in the best system for them to have success, then you could label anyone a system anything. So I don't really like that term. There is something to it. I'll bring up Jimmy Garoppolo again. It's the Shanahan system, which is very quarterback friendly, and so it minimizes the weak points of uh, quarterbacks and maximizes their strengths. And then when you put a good quarterback in Shanahan's system, you see a lot of success. Um, Kirk Cousins got a lot of notoriety in Minnesota, but he was a good quarterback in Shanahan's system in Washington. But he was young there too. So, if he had grown up with Shanahan, he'd be well on his way to being a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt in my mind. You look at all of the success that Shanahan has. Everywhere that Shanahan has been, he's produced all pro seasons out of the best talent that he's had. He made Matt Schaub into all pro, I think he was. I don't know if he was an all pro or not, but he had an amazing season in Houston. Matt Schaub, dude. Matt Schaub is never going to be on anybody's list of Hall of Fame quarterbacks, but he had Hall of Fame numbers when he was in Houston under Kyle Shanahan. And Andre Johnson, who probably is a Hall of Famer, had his best years. Julio Jones had his best years. Matt Ryan had his best years. RG3 was a revelation in the NFL in the run pass option that was utilized by Shanahan. So Shanahan is really good at maximizing the abilities of the quarterbacks that he has to work with and maximizing the abilities of the talent that he has to work with. I would say Kyle Shanahan is probably the best offensive mind that the NFL has seen since Bill Walsh. And I don't think that's an overstatement. I think that's fair. I wouldn't go so far as to say that Kyle Shanahan is the best coach. I mean, if he was the best coach in football, he wouldn't have seen his teams blow 2-score leads in fourth quarters of Super Bowls. And I don't know that I want to give him the credit for Atlanta's collapse. I think that's the head coach's fault and the defense's fault more than the offensive coordinator's fault when they lost to New England. But Kyle Shanahan, for whatever reason, has had the bad luck of having really bad things happen late in games in Super Bowls. It's kind of wow. Anyway, Lamar Jackson. So when you look at his numbers, you're like, wow, this guy's pretty good, especially in 2023. Would have been his most efficient year. His quarterback rating was impressive that year. Let me grab the numbers really quickly here. So Lamar Jackson in 2023, which was his best year. He had more touchdowns in 2019. He had 36 touchdowns. That's impressive. Not like earth-shattering, but, impressive. I would say, in today's NFL, with the extra games that they play and the way that they favor the offenses, elite quarterbacks having their best seasons should probably be throwing. I don't know. I don't want to. 36 touchdowns is a lot of touchdowns. It's hard to throw 36 touchdowns. And he had a 66% completion percentage that year, which is really impressive. So when you're looking at the numbers, and this is where I say statistics and then the eye test don't always match up. So for his career, he's got a 64.5% completion percentage. That is good. That's very good. That's very good. And then last year he threw for 3,600 yards. Now, the yardage totals and touchdown totals, the hard total numbers, are going to start getting skewed as time goes forward with this extra game. What do they play? 18 games now? I think 18 games. So when Jerry Rice, for example, scored 22 touchdowns to set the record way back when. Uh, they were playing 16-game season. No, that was a strike year, so I think he only played 12 games that year when he set that record. I'm not sure without 100%. I have to go back and look, but I know it was a shortened year, and so that record may never be broken. To be able to score as many touchdowns as he did in the games that he did, it's kind of like beating Babe Ruth's home run record within the games that he did that, but that would be awfully difficult to do. You'd have to average better than 2 touchdowns a game, which is pretty incredible. I think something like that. Anyway, so you look at Lamar Jackson, 64.5 completion percentage. That is impressive. That's very good. Passing yardage totals, I mean, he's had 2 years where he broke 3,000 yards passing. That is not elite quarterback play in today's NFL. Elite quarterbacks should be throwing for more than 4,000 yards. Easily. I mean, all of his peers, right? So when you look at who are the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and if they're healthy and playing a full season, they're all throwing for over 4,000 yards. They're all going to be approaching 5,000 yards. 6,000 yards is attainable in today's NFL. So when you're looking at less than 3,000 yards for most of his seasons, something's missing there. The real big difference is in the touchdown totals. So 6 touchdowns, 36, impressive, like I said, 26, 16, 17, and then last year, 24 passing touchdowns. So you had the league MVP. The league MVP throws for 24 touchdowns. That's it? That's not enough, man. Like, even back in the 1990s, I think the benchmarks back then were 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. That was an impressive year. Lamar Jackson did not do that last year. He had 3,600, which is good, but not elite, especially in today's football. And then 24 touchdowns? I mean, I think the league MVP has got to be doing better than that. He just really does. But that's not the real problem with Lamar Jackson. The real problem with Lamar Jackson is that so when you look at quarterbacking, right? Quarterbacking in the NFL is about as difficult of a job that there is in all of the world to be great and to be at the cream of the crop, right? At any given time, there's maybe like 6 guys that might go to the Hall of Fame one day, playing like at any given time. And as their careers wear on, that usually gets weeded down to maybe 3 guys. Those 6 that might go, like we were thinking Russell Wilson is a shoo-in a few years ago. All he's got to do is just keep what he's doing for however many more. At this point, I don't know if Russell Wilson gets there. If he doesn't continue to do what he was doing in Seattle, now in Pittsburgh, I don't think he gets to the Hall of Fame. I kind of think that Phillip Rivers is now the benchmark, If you do what Phillip Rivers did, then you get to go to the Hall of Fame. If you fail to reach the numbers that Phillip Rivers hit, especially now that they have 18-game seasons, dude, I don't know. It's going to be awfully difficult to get into the Hall of Fame without 60,000 passing yards anymore. It really is. Now, Patrick Mahomes, if his career ended tomorrow, would probably get in. I don't know. I don't think Kurt Warner should be in the Hall of Fame, but he is. I don't have a problem with Terrell Davis being in the Hall of Fame. He was maybe the best at his position in his era. You can't say that about Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner was not even a starter in New York. And even when he was in Arizona, he was a part-time player. They would bring him in situations that they thought he would succeed. Kurt Warner was unable to have success unless everything was just right, right? So if it was in a dome with perfect weather and he was surrounded by great talent, then Kurt Warner did very well. If the if the game was outdoors, Kurt Warner was not good. In fact, Kurt Warner was terrible as much as he was good. But when he was good, he was really good. So the year that he went to the Super Bowl with the Cardinals, they never should have gone to the Super Bowl that year. They got so lucky. I don't remember exactly what happened, but there had to be a string of events that lined up just right that allowed for them to play their games at home. There were much better teams than them that lost earlier in the playoffs, just bad luck, which allowed for them to play their games at home. And that's really when Kurt Warner did well, when he was in that dome in Arizona or in that dome with the Rams. And surrounded by, Anquan Bolden, and then I forget who the other guy was in Arizona. But they had two really good wide receivers. They had a good offense. And then with the Rams, the greatest show on turf, surrounded by Hall of Famers, this guy was, right? So he did very, very well when everything was lined up just right. Most of the guys in the Hall of Fame don't need everything to be just right for them to do well. And honestly, Kurt Warner should not be in the Hall of Fame. It's not right that he's in there. It's not the Hall of really good for a couple years, or not the Hall of two good seasons. You know what I mean? It's the Hall of Fame, man. I don't know. Whatever. I think he gets credit because, he was like a begging groceries or something, and then he came in and Arena League football. He was a good story, okay? I got nothing against him personally. I think he's a good man, and he stands for the right things, and he did have some success, and all the credit in the world for that. But I just think that the bar should be higher to get in the Hall of Fame, man. Like, it's not the Hall of Good. It's not the Hall of a couple good years, Running backs are an exception, because they have short careers. But for quarterbacks, I think you need to do a little bit more. Like, I think the total numbers matter. Running backs like O.J. Simpson or Terrell Davis can get by with having a few stellar years. What about Chris Johnson with the Tennessee Titans? Didn't he have 2,000 yards one year? I don't think he's going to get a Hall of Fame. He had one great year. Why doesn't they let him in? You know what I mean? So it's like they kind of pick and choose who they let in, and the reasons they let somebody in and not somebody else in, they're very inconsistent. And it's like, can you guys come up with something a little bit better? Anyway, Lamar Jackson. So, Lamar Jackson's, what makes a great quarterback, right? Quarterbacking is the hardest thing in the world to do, right? At a high level in the NFL. In the college game, you can get away with being a great athlete and just out-athlete your opponents, okay? Because you're just better. It's like a high school senior basketball player going up against junior high kids, right? Because in college, you got guys that are playing football that aren't going to be professional football players, They're going to be real estate salesmen or insurance salesmen or doctors or probably not doctors playing a lot of football, but anyway, you get the idea. Architects, whatever it might be. They're just doing the football thing because they want to, and maybe they have some athletic ability, but they're not going to be going to the NFL. They're not going to the next level. And so when you have a really good athlete who's going to go to the next level, who's competing against other guys that are not going to the next level, not even going close to the next level, they're going to embarrass those guys. Now, I don't follow college football. I don't watch college football. It would probably help me if I did. It's kind of, I would like to analyze quarterback play at the college level and see how good I would be over time at predicting who would have good NFL careers. Because I'm an eye test guy. I look at the stats, but then I want to look at the eye test, because the stats will lie sometimes. The eye test doesn't really lie, You look at a guy like Brett Favre, right? That guy just found ways to win football games. You know what I mean? Like, he was amazing. And I don't think I ever saw someone have more fun. Tom Brady had a lot of fun playing football, playing quarterback. But, man, Brett Favre was just like a kid in a candy store every time he went out there. He just loved it with every fiber of his being. Brady was more surgical. He was more, it was all business. Um, so anyway, what makes a great quarterback? Well, the ability to analyze and process information and then instinctively react and do it correctly. That's that is like that has to be there. If that's not there, then whatever that player is doing is not elite quarterbacking. The other side of it is physical, and they have to be able to take that, what they just did with their mind, and then physically take that ball and place it where it needs to be accurately and on time. And that's why it's such a hard thing, because a lot of people have the physical ability to perform at an elite level at the quarterback position. And there's even more people who have the cognitive ability to perform at elite level in the NFL at quarterbacking. But to find a guy who can do both is extremely rare. And those guys go to the Hall of Fame. Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger. These guys are more recent examples. And when you look at them, there's a wide variety, right? Tom Brady was a late draft pick. Most of the great quarterbacks, I would say, are probably expected to do well, but a lot of people who are expected to do well do not. And then you have 32 teams. Let's say that there's 6 guys that might go to the Hall of Fame playing at any given time. And then there's 3 guys that actually go there. That means that of 32 teams, you have 29 teams that have a quarterback that won't go to the Hall of Fame. And then you have another 26 that have quarterbacks that aren't very well. They're so if there's 3 guys that might go to the Hall of Fame, 3 guys that will go to the Hall of Fame, and then everybody else is a no shot, that means you got 26 teams with quarterbacks that have no shot of being elite. Okay? Well, that's a overwhelming vast majority of all the teams in football. So those teams need to find ways to be competitive, which means they need to find ways to manufacture production out of the quarterback position. And so what many teams have been trying to do more recently is to take great athletes and try and teach them how to perform at a high level, how to produce high level, how to squeeze high level production out of athletes at the quarterback position. Teach them to be good enough to give them a chance to compete, not only in the regular year, but in the postseason. And in the regular year, you can see that this strategy can produce good outcomes. Lamar Jackson is a really good example of this because what you'll see is that the team is pretty good. They've got a good coach. The defense is usually pretty good. The scheme on offense is usually pretty good. They have, all the pieces in place. They just need a really good quarterback. Well, they have an athletic quarterback who can put good production up on the field. That's good enough to be able to compete and to make the playoffs and to beat the crap out of inferior football teams. But when they have to play against good football teams, man, Lamar Jackson looks bad. Ooh. When he's playing against the bottom of the barrel teams or mediocre teams, he does very, very well. as far as win-loss record, and as far as he's gotten better at, you know, swallowing the ball and just running. It's like, okay, if you have one or two reads, if it's not there, then just tuck the ball down and go. And just run and get what you can. Don't turn it over, though. So he's gotten better at not turning it over. He still does fail because, you know, he holds the ball out. He needs to tuck it in like he's a running back if he's going to run and not hold the ball out where it can get knocked away. But, you know, that's coaching. I don't know why that's still a problem with him, but it still is this many years down the road, especially with a two-time NFL MVP. Come on, dude. Anyway, so they try to manufacture high-level production out of the quarterback position with a good athlete. And, I mean, that's what you got to do, right? Because you can't predict. If they could predict who would be great quarterbacks, that would be the first 3 people off the board every draft. If they could tell, that's who would be drafted because that's the most important position on the field. And so that's who would be every year. Tom Brady would have been the first pick overall, not the 7th pick. Brock Purdy would have been a first-round draft pick, not the last draft pick. You know what I'm saying? They can't predict these things. And I feel like the scouts, you know, I don't know how they do so bad. You know, you look at the guys that get drafted high and how often they fail to do well. There has got to be a better way of predicting who is going to thrive, right? You would think so? I don't know. I don't know why they struggle, because you have so many guys that get drafted so high in this, you know, they're total busts, especially at the quarterback position. Look at Trey Lance. The 49ers trade up, almost trade the franchise away to get this guy. Dude, turd sandwich city. The worst quarterback play. I mean, to his credit, they did win one game when he was the starting quarterback. They played the worst team in football that year, the Houston Texans. And with him as the quarterback, they found a way to still win that game. So credit to him. He's got a win under his belt. I don't know if that's the only win he has. He's just so bad. So bad. The best that ever happened to the 49ers was him getting hurt. As a fan, I wanted them to, if they're going to move up in that draft, to go after Kyle Pitts, who, that's a whole other story. I think he can do very well this year. He's actually got a quarterback now, and so we'll see how that plays out. But Lamar Jackson, okay, an elite quarterback play. So elite quarterback play means that they don't have to use their legs. You can put their feet in blocks of concrete, and they will still be able to carve you up. If you look at the guys in the Hall of Fame, that's pretty much every single guy out there. There's going to be some exceptions. Steve Young is an example of that exception. He's the only guy I can think of who was an elite quarterback that also liked to run the ball. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is more of a scrambling guy. You know what I mean? Like, he keeps plays alive and then would throw bombs to open guys on broken plays. And Patrick Mahomes has kind of refined that. I guess I would say Patrick Mahomes is a more advanced version of Aaron Rodgers and a better athlete than Aaron Rodgers. But, he possesses all the cognitive abilities to excel and to be elite at the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson, every time he plays against Patrick Mahomes, he looks terrible. He looks so bad because what you're watching on the Kansas City side is elite of the elite quarterback play in the current era. And then you watch Lamar Jackson. And it's like, wow. Well, why does he have success? Because he gets the defense gassed. He tires them out by running around all day, and then when they're tired, that he can hit guys on broken plays. Like he hit Likely for that big bomb. Why? Because the defense was tired and it was a broken play, and he just flung it up there, and his tight end went up and grabbed the ball and beat the one man he had to beat and then scored a touchdown, right? Well, that's not good quarterbacking. That's a broken play that they got lucky on. Anyway, Lamar Jackson is not an elite quarterback. He is a elite athlete. I mean, I'm not saying it's all bad. You know, the production can be good, okay? He can produce good outcomes. And against lesser defenses, it's if things are going his way, he can really be tough to stop. You know, it's not like he's terrible. It's not like he's just garbage. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to say is he's not elite. He does not possess. Let me put it this way. When you evaluate Lamar Jackson, what would you say his strongest assets are? And I think universally, people would agree that his best assets and his strongest point is when he pulls the ball down and runs. Now, if you play at the quarterback position and that is your best asset, how can you be considered an elite quarterback? You know what I mean? Compare every other elite quarterback or quote-unquote elite quarterback, the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, and you say, well, what's the best asset of Patrick Mahomes? Well, the best asset of Patrick Mahomes is his ability to read the defense, analyze that data, and instinctively place the ball where it needs to go to exploit the weakness of the defense that's out there at that time. Right? And if there is no glaring weakness, he has the athletic ability to extend the play until Kelsey gets open, or to just run the ball. If it's man, he'll roll out and run along the sideline and get a first down. Or if it's zone, I mean. If it's man, he'll pull the ball down and run straight ahead or at an angle. You know what I mean? You can't let him. So how you beat Patrick Mahomes is your 2 front defensive line go straight at him, and then your edge rushers close around him. You can't let him get through a gap and go straight ahead, because he's going to gash you for 5, 10, 15, 25, 35, 50 yards, depending on, you know, where the personnel on the field is offensively. You know, if they clear out a big zone on the right side and then the edge doesn't keep his gap and gets behind and there's a hole there, Mahomes is just gone. Aaron Rodgers did that a lot over his career too. But neither of these guys want to get hit. You know, they're not lowering their shoulder and, you know, they're going out of bounds or they're going to slide down. They're just getting what the defense has given them and going down. Lamar Jackson is not that way. He's got 1 or 2 reads, and if that's not there, then he runs. It's not like he's analyzing. Maybe they have 4 or 5 routes, but he's basically a more advanced version of Cordell Stewart, right? So Cordell Stewart or Colin Kaepernick. So you got these guys that they're told, read half the field. The other half is just smoke and mirrors. Focus on one half of the field. And you have 1 or 2 guys on your half of the field that you might throw the ball to. And if the premium option is there, throw it to him. If the secondary option is there but the premium option is not, then throw it there. If neither of those two options look good, tuck the ball down and run. That was Cordell Stewart, that was Colin Kaepernick, and that is Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson is probably a better quarterback than either of them, but man, he's just, I don't know. I wish him all the success in the world, but I wish people would stop calling him an elite quarterback because he's not. There's no elite quarterback play there. You know, every now and again he has a really good game where he looks really, really good. I've seen him do it, you know, like maybe once every 20 games. He'll have a game where he looks great, you know. I don't remember which game it was, but I think there was a game last year where he threw for over 300 yards and maybe 3 touchdowns, and he just looked really good. He was making good reads. He was hitting guys that were open. But you know what? How much of that was just the coaches called the right plays at the right time, and those just happened to be the reads that he was supposed to be looking at that game? I don't remember who they were playing, but was the defense just not a very good defense, you know? I don't know. Anyway, probably no one has watched this. Probably no one will watch this or listen to this. But I don't know. If the marriage between Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson is going to work, Lamar Jackson is going to have to work out of the under center. He's going to have to work under center, and they're going to have to not work out of shotgun. And then that's a problem because Derrick Henry, in order for him to be successful, much like Adrian Peterson, the quarterback needs to be under center. I think that should, if you look at the first drive that Baltimore had, that's what they did. And it culminated in a touchdown for Derrick Henry. I don't know if it's an ego thing with Lamar. I really don't know. But if he's ever, you know, if he's ever going to have long-term, consistent success. See, another thing, okay? So because his best asset is him tucking the ball down and running, what happens at the end of a half when the time is critical and you can't run the ball and you have to throw the ball, then now they're handcuffed. Because your quarterback's best asset is his legs, but the time is restricted, so he has to throw the ball. Well, then what do? Your best asset is your legs, but you can't run the ball because you can't run the ball because you don't have timeouts or because there's only 12 seconds left in the clock and you're in the red zone and you need to get a touchdown, so you have to throw the ball. Then what? What do? Name any other quote-unquote elite quarterback who is in that situation and the defense is like, well, we're in a good situation here now. We're up against this elite quarterback, and we're inside the 10-yard line, and they have to throw the ball. They can't run the ball, so we can cheat to stop the pass. How many elite quarterbacks are out there that the defense would be like, sweet, we got him now? That just doesn't exist unless your name is Lamar Jackson, but that's only because Lamar Jackson is an elite quarterback only in name, you know? He's won 2 league MVPs. Why? His numbers look good. If you just look at the numbers and you don't ever watch him play, he does look pretty good on paper. Not great, but pretty good, impressive. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying that there are tiers, right? There's the AAA level, the guys that are going to the Hall of Fame, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, probably Matt Stafford. I don't know if there's any other quarterbacks in the NFL currently that have played long enough. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, even if he has something terrible happen to him and never plays another football game, he's won 3 Super Bowls. as a quarterback in the NFL, he's going to the Hall of Fame. Troy Aikman, not the greatest career numbers, but he won 3 Super Bowls as a quarterback. He's going to the Hall of Fame, right? So Patrick Mahomes is in. He's done enough already to get there. 3 Super Bowls at the quarterback position, you're going to the Hall of Fame. That's just probably Eli Manning. I don't know if he's in the Hall of Fame or not, but he probably should be. He beat Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl. Probably he should be in the Hall of Fame. Just because of his postseason success alone and his ability to elevate his play in those big moments. Like I said, there's basically 2 ways that we analyze quarterback: statistical production in the regular year, and then win-loss percentage and championship rings won in the postseason. And Eli Manning has punched his card in that he's won big games in the postseason, and he beat the best quarterback that ever played twice in the Super Bowl. If he doesn't get in, I don't know how you. I don't know. I mean, he was a good quarterback. I mean, it's not like he put up garbage numbers in the regular year. He just was. So there are guys like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning who both won. Well, I guess technically Peyton Manning, did he win 2 Super Bowls? I think they kind of gave him one at the end there. He wasn't very good. I mean, he should have hung him up, but he hung around, and was able to steal one there at the end. But these guys, offensive coordinators, and Aaron Rodgers, same thing. He's only one Super Bowl. The game plan, although it'll be different this year, kind of like how, like, at the end of Favre's career, I would expect, it's ironic they both went to the Jets, but I would expect Aaron Rodgers to have a year, maybe his best statistical year, his most efficient year that he's ever had, because he's going to have a better defense, or as good of a defense as he's ever had this year with New York. And he is going to have as good, if not a better running back than he's ever had in his career in New York. And he's got talent. I mean, Wilson is an amazing talent. I don't know if he's too young to say, oh, he's as good as Devontae was, or Jordy Nelson in his prime, right? I don't know about that. We'll see how. But, I mean, Wilson, you look at the numbers he's produced with the quarterback play he's had to endure. Wilson's the real deal. And with Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, I mean, he could have 20 touchdowns this year. That would not surprise me. Aaron Rodgers likes to throw touchdowns. And I would not be surprised if Wilson scored 20 touchdowns this year. I'm not saying he's going to, but it wouldn't shock me. Would not shock me. If either him or Breece Hall, either one of those two could score 20 touchdowns. Definitely. But I would expect Aaron Rodgers to have a year this year similar to what Brett Favre had in that amazing year he had with the Minnesota Vikings. The year that they got knocked out with that bounty get against the Saints there. That was Brett Favre played 16 years with the Green Bay Packers, and his best season was that year in Minnesota. But I think his motivation was, he had a chip on his shoulder. He wanted revenge against the Packers. I think he threw 7 or 8 touchdowns against the Packers that year in the 2 games they played. That's pretty crazy. Anyway, so when you have guys like Aaron Rodgers, especially when they're younger and in their prime, guys like Aaron Rodgers, guys like Drew Brees, guys like Peyton Manning, you have these great offensive assets, these great elite quarterbacks. The downside to that is that a lot of times the game plan that they put together is the same every week. It doesn't matter who they're playing. The game plan is, well, we're going to go out there, we're going to throw for 300, 400 yards, and we're going to score 3 or 4 touchdowns with our quarterback. Try and stop us. We're so confident in our ability to do that. That's what we're going to do. Good luck. And usually it works pretty well in the regular year. They put up big numbers. The quarterback likes it because they get to be the center of the the offense. They get all of the credit when they win, and they don't lose that much, so it's not a real big deal. When it comes to the playoffs, though, and good defenses are on the field, they're like, oh, you're telling us what you're going to do? Well, we'll just stop that then. And that's why you see a lot of times some of the better statistical producing quarterbacks in the regular year struggle in the postseason. And that's one thing that I always thought was so impressive about Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick. Tomlin with Roethlisberger and Belichick with Brady, was that these coaches and the quarterbacks specifically, the game plan would vary based on who they're playing. And Ben Roethlisberger, even more so than Tom Brady, one week would go out there, throw 5 or 6 touchdowns, and then the next week he would throw 1 or none, and he wouldn't care. The game plan this week was to just open it up wide open and just throw the ball all day long, throw the ball 45, 55 times. He puts up 450 yards and 5 touchdowns. Yay, sweet, we won. The following week, he throws 17 passes, 1 or no touchdowns, because they're handing the ball off all game. Because who they're playing is weak against the run. And who they played last week didn't have any coverage guys. So they blew the top off the defense the week before because the defense was trash against the pass. The following week they're playing against a team that can't stop the run. And so that was the way that they would run their teams, and that's why those guys had such great postseason success. They made deep playoff runs because every year, pretty much in the AFC, especially once Roethlisberger became elite, and even when he was younger, the career path of Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger are very similar in that Ben Roethlisberger early in his career had great success, won the Super Bowl his rookie year, his second year, I don't remember, and as he grew within his experience in NFL football, he grew into this, offensive juggernaut of a quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger did. And Tom Brady as well. When Tom Brady won his first 3 Super Bowls, imagine his first 3 Super Bowls, he was the guy that was, I don't even want to call him, they would call him a system quarterback today, but a caretaker, a guy who was told, don't screw it up. Let the defense in the running game win the game. Just, get us some first downs and keep the drive alive a couple times when we need it. But for the most part, your job is to not lose the game. And not losing the game won 3 Super Bowls early in Tom Brady's career. But as time went on and he learned more about the game and got better at quarterbacking, he grew into the elite Hall of Famer as far as statistical production that we saw later on in his career. Roethlisberger was similar career path, but also, I'm going to say the word humble, and people are going to be like, oh, humble, yeah, humble. Well, you have to be able to put your ego aside and go out there one week, throw the ball 45, 55 times for 450 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then the next week to be totally okay with handing the ball off that many times and only throwing 20 passes or 17 passes because the game plan calls for handing the ball off and scoring no touchdowns this week. Now, granted, I think those guys always wanted to get at least 1 touchdown, Let's get at least 1 touchdown. Can I throw at least 1 touchdown this week? I'm sure they wanted that, right? You don't want to have a 0 at the end of the stat line, but then there's guys like Peyton Manning who I just don't think that was something that he was going to be okay with. And that's also why he only won 1 Super Bowl when he was with the Colts. If they had, see, that's the thing. Peyton Manning was the strongest personality on that team. I don't believe that Tony Dungy was a stronger personality than Peyton Manning. And they run that offense and that team the way Peyton wanted. And Tony Dungy was a defensive guy anyway. He played in the secondary when he played, and he was a defensive-minded coach. And kind of like how Kyle Shanahan focuses on the offense. He's a head coach, but he focuses on the offense, and he kind of lets the defense do what they want. That's kind of, Tony Dungy was the opposite side of that. He was a defensive guy, focused on the defense, and kind of let the offense do what they want. And Peyton Manning was the dominant force of those teams. And for better or for worse, it cost them playoff runs. And that's just what happens a lot of times when you have these elite caliber, high draft pick quarterbacks that from a young age they've been told that they're the best, and they believe it and they buy into it, and they're the best, they're the leader, they're going to win, they're always going to win. And then it in the regular year it produces good fruit for them, but then in the playoffs, because their game plan doesn't ever really deviate very much, it's always, we're going to throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, try and stop us. Good defenses will take that away. The home runs that you are able to, like, if you look at when Bill Belichick played up against Patrick Mahomes would get shut down, just put away, because they would take away his best assets, and then he would have to scratch and crawl and get first downs. It wasn't a game of touchdowns, it was a game of inches and yards and first downs. And these high-level, high-octane offenses are not comfortable playing in those games. They're used to playing with a 2-score lead, where the defense pins their ears back and goes against the opposing quarterback, and they're playing with a lead. They can run it when they want, they can throw it when they want, the defense is on their heels. That's what these high-octane offenses are used to playing in. But in the playoffs, that doesn't happen. You're playing against good defenses, and the good defenses impose their will on the offense, and the offense has to take what that defense gives them. And if the quarterback isn't comfortable doing that, isn't used to doing that, then it's really difficult for those teams to get used to playing in that environment. They're uncomfortable. That's not what they're used to doing, and they struggle. And that's where you usually see those high-octane offenses, those unbalanced teams. They struggle in the postseason. And that is one reason why I would think that, if Lamar Jackson were a little bit better quarterback, they should thrive in that environment, because the pressure that the running quarterback puts on a good defense is so much greater as far as wearing them down and making them tired. So, like, if you have Tom Brady back there, he's not gonna take off and tire out the defensive line in a way that a Russell Wilson would, or a Patrick Mahomes would. They are going to be fresher later in the game. Russell Wilson, like, half their game plan was to have him run around in the backfield in the first half to just gas the defense. So by the time they got to the end of the third quarter, the defense was worn out. They were tired. When the Rams beat Cincinnati a couple of years back, I said, what, the Rams are the best team in football until they get gassed. I mean, the best defense in football until they get gassed. And they were. And they probably were the year before, too. But teams would get them gassed, and then they would beat them up. And last year, I would say that was San Francisco. When San Francisco wasn't gassed, they were the best defense in football last year. But if you could get them tired, then they weren't that dangerous anymore. And you saw that at the end of the Super Bowl. They were tired. They were gassed. And that's when guys like Mahomes, guys like Russell Wilson will beat you up, because now they have a half a step on you because you're tired. And so they can make that broken play extended just a little bit longer, and then there you go. Anyway, I wish Lamar Jackson all the success in the world. I don't know anything about him personally. I hope no one's ever going to hear about this, but I have no ill will towards him. Okay, I wish him all the success in the world. Um, but if he's going to make this work with Derrick Henry, he's going to have to learn to play from under center. And if he wants to ever be viewed as a truly elite quarterback, regardless of what awards he's won, not if he ever wants to have success in the playoffs, if he ever wants to have success against good defenses and good teams consistently, he's going to need to learn to play under center. And he's going to need to learn to quarterback first and not run until he absolutely needs to. If he can learn how to do that, he could be truly elite. But, I would say this about him. Of the athletes that have had success in the NFL playing the quarterback position, Lamar Jackson is probably the best. He's better than Cam Newton. He's better than Michael Vick. Who else is there recently? He's not a better quarterback than Russell Wilson. I would say that. Russell Wilson's a better quarterback. Over his body of work, I've watched too many games. Russell Wilson, that guy, he's nasty. I hope he has success in Pittsburgh this year. That'll be interesting, anybody who has heard this, watch the difference between, because that's the thing with Russell Wilson, or not Russell Wilson, with Lamar Jackson. Every time he plays against a superior quarterback, Lamar Jackson looks really bad. So it'll be interesting to see how Russell Wilson adapts and plays under Tomlin. Dude, I think that I'm not predicting anything here, but I do think that Russell Wilson has an opportunity here to reignite his Hall of Fame chances, and I think he has a chance to have a great marriage with him and Tomlin. Mike Tomlin, the last couple of years, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been a little bit down. Ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired, let's be honest, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been a little bit down. But Mike Tomlin is on the short list of the best coaches in football. I would have said a few years back, he might have even been the second. When Harbaugh left the Niners, I think probably Tomlin was the second best coach in the NFL, second only to Bill Belichick. Since Roethlisberger has left, their defense has been great. They've been struggling to find consistency in the running game, and they got no good quarterbacks. But they got Russell Wilson, who could be, he could still be a Hall of Famer one day. I thought for sure he was on pace, but these last couple of years in Denver have hurt those odds. But if he can turn it around and become the Russell Wilson that we used to see in Seattle, in Pittsburgh, that's a nasty team there. They really only have the one good receiver right now, but if they start out hot and they are really doing well, bring in Devontae Adams, man. The Raiders aren't going to do very. Who knows? Maybe the Raiders will have success, but I would expect the Raiders to not have very much success this year. Bring in a Devontae Adams. Bring in another wide receiver, a veteran receiver with playoff experience that can elevate that. Maybe even make a deal with Seattle. Bring in one of his old guys that he used to throw to in Seattle. Do something there in Pittsburgh, because and I'm saying if they're doing well before the trade deadline, Pittsburgh could go on a run this year. I will give my predictions for this year as I close this out here. Um, so I made these before the beginning of the year, and here are my predictions for the NFL 2024 season. In the NFC, the number 1 seed, the San Francisco 49ers. The number 2 seed, the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Niners are going to have a tough schedule, but they have a juggernaut of a team. They might have the best roster that the NFL has seen since, dude, honestly, since in the salary cap era. Their roster is loaded. But they have a tough schedule, but we'll see, you know. Their schedule is going to be tough. It's kind of BS because Kansas City, on the other hand, has a relatively soft schedule compared to San Francisco, and whatever. Anyway, so Niners in the number 1 seed in the NFC. Falcons in the number 2 seed. Why the Falcons? Well, they have a quarterback now, and they have really good talent on offense, and their defense has been quietly putting together some pretty nasty seasons the last couple of years. So I like the talent level in Atlanta, and they play in a just garbage division. Nobody's going to compete with them in that division, and their schedule is easy. They got one of the best. They got one of the easiest schedules this year, and they have an elite quarterback now, and they have elite talent on offense, and they got a good defense. I like the Falcons a lot. Number 3, the Detroit Lions. Why? Well, they're just a good football team, and they got a good organization that they're building there now over the last couple of years. That head coach they got is good. I like him. The team really feeds off of his energy. I like the Lions. The Eagles will be the 4 seed. I'm not a big believer in Jalen Hurts. I don't like his, cat and mouse. It's the home run football, and I mean Saquon Barkley is going to help with that. They brought him in to get pressure off of Hurts. I'm not a big believer in what I think Philadelphia's window kind of has closed. I mean, they collapsed so harshly last year. Just they were no good at the second half. I don't ever remember a team that started so strong finishing so garbage as Philadelphia did last year. I don't know. I'm just not a big believer, but they have a garbage division. I mean, the Giants aren't going to be any good this year. Washington probably isn't going to be any good this year. Dallas is, let's be honest, man, Dallas is done. I think Dallas is finished. McCarthy is going to be canned. Maybe they bring in Bill Belichick. I don't know, but I think Dallas is done. And then as far as the wild cards, I like the Packers as the 5 seed. Again, soft division, I mean, they got the Lions to compete with, but the NFC is very top heavy. You've got a couple teams at the top that are good, and then everybody else is not good. So the conference is weak in the NFC, outside of the very top end. And Packers have a good team. They got a. I didn't watch their game yesterday, but so long as they stay healthy, I mean, I'm not a real. I haven't decided on Jordan Love yet. I've been telling everybody that we'll know by the end of the year if he's real or not. We'll know. If he's the real deal, we will know. There's no question about that. But I like the Packers to win that 5 seed, largely because the conference is weak. I like the Rams as the 6 seed. They got a good organization there. They got a good quarterback. The Rams will make it just because they have a good quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, there aren't very many good quarterbacks in the NFC right now, and they have one of them. They're going to the playoffs. And then the Panthers. So this is like, everybody thinks the Panthers are going to be shit this year. But you know what? I'm just throwing a dart out there. They're going to be overlooked. They're going to steal wins. They got a garbage conference, and I think they're going to steal some wins. And they're going to be the never saw that coming team this year. In the AFC, New York Jets, number 1 seed. They have an elite defense. They have an elite running back. They have an elite quarterback. They have a great coach. I really like Saleh. He is fantastic. And he just knows how to get his guys going. And look how they competed last year. With the garbage quarterback play they had last year, they were competitive in so many of those games. They were very, very competitive. You add Aaron Rodgers to that mix, and then you bring in the players that they brought in. The Jets are going to be a juggernaut. They are just going to be, the Jets are going to be tough to beat. Houston Texans, well, again, kind of like the Falcons, they've got a garbage division. I mean, Tennessee is a disaster. Jacksonville hasn't shown me anything. The Colts I don't know. Ever since Peyton Manning left, the Colts just really have been... I picked the Colts a couple of years ago. I thought they were going to do well. They really just did not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not believing in the Colts. Plus their schedule, I think, is favorable. I believe in their quarterback. C.J. Stroud looks like the real deal to me. As a rookie, to be as successful as he was, he looked good. He passed the eye test. He passed the stat test. I like their coach. I like what the Houston Texans are building down there, and I like them to be the 2 seed. I like the Chargers as the 3 seed to win that division. I'm a big believer in Harbaugh. I think he's the second best coach in football, right? Well, actually, you know what? He might be the best coach in football because I think he was the second best coach in football when Bill Belichick was running the Patriots organization and and Harbaugh was running the 49ers organization. And with now Bill Belichick being gone, I don't know that there's anybody better. Andy Reid, I think Andy Reid's success is tied to Patrick Mahomes because if you look at Andy Reid's success specifically in the postseason prior to acquiring Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid was just that guy that just couldn't win a big game for his life. And, I don't know. Anyway, I think the marriage between Harbaugh and Herbert is going to be very impactful. Jim Harbaugh was able to drag the 49ers to the Super Bowl with the likes of Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. Imagine what he will do with Justin Herbert. They play a very physical brand of football, and they're going to run the ball, and they're going to hit you hard on defense. And they got a quarterback, man, Justin Herbert. I'm telling you, the next 10 years, the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC goes through Herbert and Burrow. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert are going to be the gatekeepers of the AFC for the next 10 years. With that said, I pick the Browns to win the North. They're poor man's San Francisco 49ers. They run a similar offense. Their defense is aggressive. They can run the ball. They have talent on offense. Their quarterback, he hasn't had a full season since he left Houston, and he's a good quarterback. He's good. I like the Cleveland Browns to win that division. It's going to be a bloody, bloody mess. Now, I will say Pittsburgh, maybe Pittsburgh. If Russell Wilson is back to form, then Pittsburgh wins that division. But he's got to show it to me first. But right now, I like Cleveland. In the number 5 seed, the Kansas City Chiefs, just because Patrick Mahomes alone is going to drag them to the playoffs. I think Kelsey loses a step. He didn't look very good last night. It's week 1, whatever. But I think their defense is going to be exposed this year. I just think they're going to take a step back. They're going to lose both their games to the Chargers. The Raiders probably steal a game from them. Maybe they even lose that game when they go up to Denver. I don't know, but Kansas City is going to take a step back. They will be the 5 seed, though. The Bills at the 6 seed. I don't believe in the Bills. I don't think their defense is that good. I don't believe that the running game has proven that it's that good. They let go of all their passing targets, but Josh Allen's a hell of a good quarterback. He'll drag them into that 6th seed there. And then the Bengals. I don't know why. I think it's really the division is going to be tough and their schedule is going to be tough. And I'm not sure, they're going to have some learning curves with the new players on offense. But, they got too good of a quarterback to not make the playoffs. I like the Bengals coming in at that final wild card spot. And as far as the conference, okay, it's going to be a rematch, Lions versus 49ers. Those are the two best teams in that conference, in my opinion. The Falcons, I have them ahead of the Lions, but that's because of the strength of schedule. I think the Falcons have an easier path. Plus, the Lions are going to have a target on them now. The Falcons have got nobody looking at them. They're going to run over people, but they'll lose in the playoffs. I don't believe them in the playoffs. And then in the AFC, Chargers and Jets. And the main reason why I say who's going to win that game, ultimately, so I like the Chargers and the Jets. Harbaugh, he's either Burrow or Herbert is going to, dictate who goes to the Super Bowl in the AFC. I would pick the Jets, but for some reason, Aaron Rodgers finds a way to lose big playoff games. He just does. I don't know if it's bad luck or what, but plus, with all of his, he's just kind of become, the media doesn't like him anymore. I don't know. Anyway, I like the Chargers to pull off the big upset. Harbaugh finds a way to shut down Aaron Rodgers, and Herbert excels, and they win that game. Niners beat the Lions. Niners are, like I said, man, they might have the best, most talented, most dominant roster that any team in the NFL has had since the beginning of the salary cap era. They are a juggernaut football team. And I think Brock Purdy's only going to continue to get better. I made this prediction before they re-signed Ayuk, and I said that Deebo Samuel is going to break Jerry Rice's touchdown record this year. I'm not saying he's going to score 23 passing or receiving touchdowns, but I don't know that he can do that now that Ayuk is back. But I made the prediction, so I'm not gonna walk it back. I know the equation has changed, but I like Deebo Samuel to have just like some kind of special year this year. He might score. It's going to be tough now that Ayuk is back, but I'm not going to walk it back. I said it. I'm sticking to it. Deebo Samuel breaks Jerry Rice's San Francisco 49ers record for touchdowns in a single season. He has more games to do it, He's only got to score 2 touchdowns a game every game, and he's going to crush it, right? I know that sounds silly, but yeah, defenses are going to pay more attention to Christian McCaffrey with all of his success last year. Defenses are going to have to cover Ayuk. That just leaves Deebo to carve you up, man. And yeah, I like Deebo a lot. Monster year this year. 49ers versus Chargers in the Super Bowl. And either way, Harbaugh or Shanahan finally wins the Super Bowl. Hopefully it's the Niners, but we'll see. That's my prediction for 2024. Go Niners.